Hello, you're listening to Deeply Curious. My name is Cody Jensen, and joining me in our Portland studio apartment is my wife, Sarah.
Hello.
Deeply Curious is produced by Christian B. Schmidt and associate produced by Greg and Christy Jensen, with additional support by the staff and crew members of the Jensen AV Club, and with a special shout out to Ivor Lobo and James Hayes, who joined us this week.
Hello.
If you would like more information or would like to know how you can get deeper access or exclusive content, you can head over to jensenav.club. That is our Patreon page. It's how you can support the art that we are creating while also getting a few perks for yourself. In this episode, I want to talk about feeling things. Maybe feeling too much. And not feeling enough. I read a column from a modern philosopher, columnist, writer. I'm not sure exactly what his title would be, but he's a writer for The Guardian. His name is Oliver Burkeman, and he writes a column every week that I very much enjoy called This Column Will Change Your Life. And in this particular column, it is titled Snowflake or Tough Cookie, You're Just Hiding from Pain.
I already agree.
And so the gist of kind of a snowflake versus, tough cookie is snowflake, Berkman describes as the 20-something university student who can't hear a vaguely challenging opinion without melting into a puddle of panic. And we've talked about this, I think, in the past on the podcast, whenever we talked a little bit about The Coddling of the American Mind by Jonathan Haidt.
Yeah.
And just how these, basically exactly what I just said, just like the young 20-somethings of, our American...
Gen Z.
Yeah, the Gen Zers, just not being able to handle a challenging opinion, no matter how small that opinion is challenged. And then what we're also talking about is the other side of thick skin. I really like what Oliver said, talking about the snowflakes of, at this point, there are simply too many tales of young people demanding protection from the discomfort of other viewpoints to resist the conclusion that what they really need in most cases is to grow a thicker skin. Which is just a beautifully crafted diss. But then the very next sentence is, and yet thick skin has its issues too. Basically talking about how there is also similar equal problems with having a thick skin, in the fact that you turn into a stoic.
Right.
And as philosopher Todd May points out, there's something about all of this that smacks of emotional invulnerabilism, of the idea that we might extricate ourselves from the world's contingencies so they do not affect us.
Yeah, that would be like toxic masculinity. Right? Like, don't cry, don't show emotion, be solid.
Yeah, and taking that to the extreme of, like the Stoics, philosophy. Oliver was talking about that, and then wrapping up the thicker skin issue, says, a meaningful life entails feeling pain, not ensuring you never do.
Yeah.
Making that point that there is those that fight off feeling pain by trying to avoid anything that confronts or challenges who they are. Then there's the other side of having, 2-inch thick skin, where you're just not letting anything affect you so that you never have to feel.
Basically, invulnerability manifests itself in two ways, right? Is what it's saying.
On the extremes,
Yeah, like it manifests itself by either being too sensitive so that you surround yourself with only the things that look like you and whatever, and not sensitive at all. Those are like the two ways that invulnerability kind of like becomes a thing.
That is exactly how vulnerability manifests itself within the two people on this podcast.
That's true, actually.
Our whole lives, I struggle to feel.
Right.
I do not understand crying in movies. Like, I it is something that I want to do. Like, it's like I have this desire of like, I want to feel so deeply in this movie that I cry. And movies that make me tear up, and very, very few have like made one single tear, drop down my face. Those movies end up becoming some of my favorite movies.
Right.
Like the movies that I like, whenever people ask, what are your favorite movies? And I talk about those, all of them are because they make me feel. They may not be like artistic masterpieces. They may not be best picture winners, things like that,
Right.
but they actually make me feel. And that's why they became some of my favorite movies.
Yeah, I think it's very evident, I guess, like you were saying, between the two of us, because I do feel like you have a difficult time sometimes sympathizing, or you've gotten a lot better, like as you've gotten older.
Yes,
like,
I've definitely sought to feel.
Yeah, you're just this like cold, rigid person. But I do think sometimes your immediate response can still be like
without mercy.
Yeah, I didn't want to say like unsympathetic or unempathetic, but I mean,
because my natural state, my natural response would be clear cut, practical,
very
truth.
logical. Yeah.
So it's whatever is the most logical, practical truth answer. That is the immediate thing that I'm going to say.
Right.
And I do not see the feelings in it.
Right.
Like I do not like consider like this. If I say this,
Right.
This person may take that, the wrong way, or see me
Right.
think that I'm angry at them because of what I said, that type of thing. I years struggled with, that. And then I went on a literal like journey of finding more empathy in my life, and helped me like figure out those things of like, this is the practical, truth or whatever, but this person, feels this way or whatever it is,
practical, et cetera,
and
et cetera.
so have to, put this in a nicety sandwich.
Yeah. Nicety sandwich. Yeah. I think you definitely operate off of thinking, and I definitely operate off of feeling. So like I'm the exact opposite.
But what's funny about that is most people are on a spectrum of, feeling and logical.
Right.
And we are on the two opposite ends.
Yeah.
Like I am as far over into logical you can get without having a diagnosed behavioral
disorder or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you basically on the other end,
logic is nothing to me.
You are on the complete feeling side all the way up until the point where you do not have a diagnosed personality disorder.
It's true. I think it's probably why we argue so much. Because we do approach it from completely different ground levels, like
foundations.
Yes. Like there, I mean, if you're not a feeler, you're not going to understand somebody who is like feeling, you know what I mean? Or like, I don't know. It's just like really easy for me to be like, like I just look at something. Oh, for example, I saw this like photo on Twitter the other day, and it was this like telephone pole on the corner of a neighborhood that they were taking down and replacing with a new one. And somebody typed up this whole letter about it, and just like, I've served this neighborhood for decades and it's changed over time, and like just, going on about, I hope I get made into toothpicks and whatever. But it made me cry. And I don't even really know why, but there was this one sentence that said, talking about all the staples that it had in it were evidence of all of the garage sales and the lost pets and things like that. And it said, socks, cinnamon, poncho, and the rest. I hope you made it home. I hope I do too. And I just literally burst into tears. Like I was so emotional about it. I don't even really, I mean, I guess like you can kind of deduce like why that would make someone feel like they should cry or whatever. But like, I don't really know why it made me cry. It just made me cry. Because there's something like under the surface feeling that I think I'm very attuned to. And so it doesn't have to really make sense to me in order for it to like just really affect me. Whereas like for you, you're a very logical person. So like if it doesn't make sense, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no,
you know?
Well, in the that realm of things of just like you feel something and you're like, I feel like something, you know, whatever. I don't have a great example. And then I'm just like baffled.
Yeah.
Like, well, obviously that's make believe.
Yeah. Oh, we've had so many arguments that start out like that. Or, oh, well, I think for a long time, part of our misunderstandings was like how I feel about just life. I mean, like how, if you really sit down and think about it, how, you know, we're stuck in this routine of when you grow up, you have to get a job because you have to be able to afford your life. And then you're really wasting the majority of your life working for money that doesn't really matter because you have to be able to live in a place that doesn't really matter. And, you know, like there's like all that like philosophical, what is life really about kind of stuff. And I feel like the culture or the economical system that we live in now isn't really what we were meant to live in, is kind of how I feel, you know? And like I have all these philosophical debates with myself about it all the time. And you would always be like, yeah, but you have to. I'm like, no, I know I have to, but I'm not talking about like, what do I need to do? I'm talking about how it's not fair. And you're like, yeah, but you have to. Like you couldn't really understand that it's not about like what I do and do not have to do, but about like the principle of the thing. We used to argue about that all the time. Yeah,
just it was like there was no practicality in the opinion.
Right, because there's literally nothing you can change about it. So and so you were like, well, it doesn't matter. You just have to.
Yeah. But what's really funny about that is the fact that was you in your early 20s. And I was like, go, you know, I had
You're full force
doing this thing and like had my life figured out, you know, all that type of stuff. And that you were asking all of these questions. And then 10 years later, I'm turning 30 and I start basically questioning and asking and saying all of the exact same things that you just said. Because I went on a journey of more feeling.
Yeah.
So I think if I never would have felt, I never would be in a position now of being in a quarter life crisis, essentially.
I know. I think I messed up. I was too vocal about
You made me feel too much.
Yeah, I guess so. Whatever. But yeah, I do think we approach things completely different.
Yeah, in everything.
Like I don't know of two people who look at things so opposite than what we do.
Right. I think that's the beauty and the dynamic of the dynamic of like our relationship is the fact that we do start from a head and a heart perspective.
Yeah.
But we have the same goal.
Right.
And so when we point the head and the heart towards the same goal, you get something that is full bodied and like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you're much more capable of like, again, full force ahead, just like disciplined drive. Okay, this is the idea. I'm going to do it. Whereas I'm like much more lax and I'm sort of like on a windy road that leads nowhere. And you're just like straight ahead. I'm going to get this done. So it's kind of nice, but it is
as long as your windy road intersects with my straight road
every once in a
while.
Yeah, it can be a little frustrating sometimes, but I do think it's beneficial overall. Because I do think like logical thinking is important.
Yeah, I mean, I think that goes into the core of with you being an Enneagram 4 and myself being an Enneagram 8, and the fact that they the books say that the 4 and the 8 make one of the most contentious but creative relationships.
It uses the word volatile, but
yes. Specifically?
Yeah. Makes me feel a little worse about it, but Yeah, it does say that we can be the most volatile, but the most creative pairing. So if you can keep your,
I mean, I don't
stuff together, then
I don't feel like that we have ever dipped into the most volatile, but also we haven't dipped into the most creative. So maybe we need to fight more.
Maybe. Please don't.
And then I could write an awesome album.
I think maybe we argue enough.
I don't even write music, but if we have a big enough fight, I might.
Maybe you would. You'd turn your creative outlets.
Yeah.
I feel like, I don't think we're super volatile, but I do think we argue a lot. Like, I think our natural states are, I'm right, both of us. Like, I think I am correct in a lot of different ways. Like every way.
Well, it's because your feelings are correct.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
And my thoughts are correct. And we have to figure out where do they come together.
Exactly. We're on completely different foundations. And we start from, no. You need to understand my feeling foundation. And you're like, no. This is purely logical over here. So like, I think it leads to a lot of arguments.
It's funny. There's a lot of our conversations that we completely agree with each other, and we both have to say, I'm not arguing with you,
but we're 100% arguing.
Like, we're in an argumentative tone, we're cutting each other off, and we're talking, but literally we think the exact same thing. I'm just saying the way I think about it, and Sarah is saying the way she feels about it, and both of us feel like we're saying opposite things.
Yeah, even though we're saying the exact same thing, and neither of us actually lets up. You know what I mean? Like I'll say, I know, I agree with you. I'm just saying, whatever. And then I say the exact same thing.
And then I'm like, well, if you agree, you want to say that?
Because I feel like, because we're in an argumentative situation, I feel like we don't agree. And so I have to like keep arguing until you agree, even though logically I know that you agree.
I'm like, every sentence I start, I'm like, I agree with everything you just said. I'm on the same page. Here is an additional thought to what you just said that is in agreement to it.
Exactly.
And then I'll say that thing. And then she's like, but blah, blah. And I'm like,
we keep arguing.
I agree.
But you do the same thing.
I know.
Because we're both very stubborn and a little bit spiteful. And so we just like, we are capable of fighting to the death for the things we believe in. Both of us. Like, we're very strongly opinionated and, whatever. So you fight to the death of the thing that you believe in, and it's the same thing that I agree with you, but I'm fighting to the death because the foundations are different. So it feels a little like,
I just looked that up in the dictionary, and the definition, the word for that is spite.
Oh yeah, I'm very spiteful. I used to deny it, but I don't deny it anymore. And I don't think, I know spite is not like the best quality to have, but I don't think it's, a little bit of spite is a good thing. I feel like sometimes.
Maybe. But another thing that I was thinking about this with the feeling and the thinking is, you just talked about how we argue a lot. Yeah. I wouldn't say that we argue a lot.
Really?
In the same way that whenever we were first married, and I, for the first 3 years.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, I literally thought everything was going hunky-dory. And Sarah is over here like, where's the nearest razor blade?
Yeah.
And I had no idea, because I'm just I'm not considering the feelings of the room at all. My thoughts are, everything seems fine. Nobody's throwing anything. Everybody's doing their, duties, and, we're sleeping in the same bed. Like, we're just doing the thing.
And I was wildly
This
depressed.
is all a sham. We're doing all the things.
I was wildly depressed. That's true. But I guess that's just like our significant foundational difference.
Yeah. And so even now, it was extreme when we first got married.
Right.
But now we definitely like argue, but I wouldn't agree with the statement, we argue all the time.
Huh. Maybe we argue a medium amount then, because I feel like it's all the time.
But also, you are the world's biggest exaggerator.
No, see, whatever. We don't have to get into that. I feel like we argue a
Ooh,
lot.
That actually is a really good thing. The exaggeration
Mm-hmm.
thing is another example of feeling versus thinking.
Yes. I'm trying to, and I think that's probably why I
we
exaggerate.
argue about that so much too.
Yeah.
I'm figuring this out live.
He's having an epiphany.
Yeah.
Yeah, I exaggerate. And I know that I exaggerate, but it's because I'm trying to really just make you understand, not you specifically, but you in the general sense. I'm just trying to really make sure that people understand what I mean and what I feel and like how.
Mm-hmm.
Of course I don't know, do something a million times, like, but I say that, oh my gosh, it was like a million times, but it wasn't. It was like 2.
It was more than
like,
1.
It felt like way too many or whatever. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like there was, I don't know. That's how I express my feelings, I guess.
Yeah, and so that leads into our me arguing with Sarah regularly because whenever she uses hyperbole like that, it is based in feeling, whereas I'm completely just thinking.
Right, and so you call me a liar.
Yes, and I say, no, you are lying.
And that makes me angry.
Because to exaggerate is to lie. To say that I always do something,
right,
or that the only conversation we ever have is X, then you are lying because we have these conversations that prove it.
Yeah.
They're recorded. And then if I always did something, then they're like, there wouldn't be any of the other things I can name, etc.
He's defending himself right now. The thing is
I understand we all exaggerate. It's a thing.
Yeah.
Sarah,
well, anyways, that's what happens. I exaggerate a lot. He calls me a liar. I get mad that he's calling me a liar because I very much value my character and integrity, and I'm not a liar, and it offends me. And so then I start arguing back. And now we're here.
Yeah, although I never call you a liar.
You have literally called me a liar.
No, I don't call you a liar to say that you are lying.
Oh my gosh. This is another thing we argue about. You say stuff like that and it doesn't matter because it feels the same to me. These sentences, while they might be different, you're lying versus you are a liar might be different to you. They're the exact same to me.
And a prime example of the head versus the heart.
Yeah. Well, anyways, what does all this have to do with
Okay, yeah. So in Oliver's column, he says, seen this way, the sensitive student and the thick-skinned invulnerabilist start to look strangely familiar. One seeks to avoid circumstances that might provoke feelings of distress, and the other seeks to avoid feelings of distress, whatever the circumstances. The obvious third alternative is that it might be possible to feel the distress without it destroying you.
Ooh, I have not found that yet.
By all means, use stoicism or meditation to take the edge off of things, but let go of the goal of eliminating suffering entirely. Most of us want to feel caught up in the world, and we want to feel gripped by what we do and those we care about, involved with them and taken up by them. The price of this involvement is our vulnerability. A life in which nothing could hurt would be one in which nothing could matter.
That's interesting. I wrote a thing down the other day, a thought that came to me, and I feel like maybe it applies a little bit because I said, my mistake is always in searching for a feeling or a moment that I could live in forever. And like, that's where distress and stuff comes from, is because you're trying to like hold on to like this one particular feeling or whatever. But it's true that you can't sustain that. Like life is life and it's going to go up and down, right? So I guess I understand what he's saying, but I don't know if I like it.
Well, I think you do understand. I think you agree with what I'm saying.
No, I do. I do agree. It's like the holding two opposing feelings and like having to be okay with the tension between them. You know, like I wholeheartedly agree with what he's saying, and I think that that's my belief deep down. Like that's obviously my belief, but like there is a piece of me that's like, yeah, but life should be like just a little bit simpler. You know, like you can make it just like not hurt so much, like you know.
Yes, but I think you would agree with this statement, that a life not felt is a life not lived.
Oh, 100%, I would agree with that.
I think that's like basically your motto.
I mean, yeah, I don't want to be alive if I'm not feeling things.
Yeah. And so I think that you don't seek, I think that you are heavy on the feeler scale, and, you know, not trying to have a thick skin, you know, and let things, whatever. But I don't think that you are using that to hide your vulnerability.
Yeah, I would say that I do a pretty good job of, like, I don't have a thick skin. Like, I'm not invulnerable, or I try very hard not to be. I feel like I'm just naturally, I just can't help but like being flooded with emotions sometimes. But yeah, I don't shy away from like things that, like if somebody disagrees with me, I don't shy away from that. I'm not like, oh, I can't talk to you or watch your stand up or, you know, whatever. Like I don't, because I think I very much, it is a belief of mine that to have as many points of view around you as possible is the only way to grow as a human being. And so I very much welcome like different ideas and opinions, even if it's the exact opposite of mine and I don't understand where it's coming from. I'm not like, ooh, you're wrong. I'm like, oh, tell me more.
Like you don't need a trigger warning for every conversation.
Right. Yeah, I don't.
Because you're not, I guess it's because you're not afraid to feel. I think that's where it comes in, is that if you are afraid to feel, then you need the trigger warning. You don't want any conversation to conflict with your already,
right, because
like,
you don't know what
opinions.
It's gonna like drag up.
Yeah,
like,
because you're afraid to feel.
That makes sense. I do think on some levels, sometimes I can tend toward that, not with the world, but like internally. I do feel like I sometimes like avoid myself because I'm afraid of like what I have to feel in order to get past something, or you know what I mean? I do feel like I can avoid my own feelings internally, but it's not like I don't really know how to explain it. It's like in a self-love kind of way, or like a self-sabotage kind of way. You know what I mean? Like I don't really address certain negative thought patterns or whatever about like myself personally, like internally, because I'm afraid that I can't handle all of the crying that I know I'll have to do, and I don't want to do it. But I don't do that like
externally.
Yeah.
You are internally, you are afraid of your internal feelings, but you're not afraid. You seek out external feelings.
Totally. Yes. And maybe I seek out external feelings because it'll give me a little bit of that sometimes. And like, I'll be like, yeah, that was enough feeling. I got it out of my system without actually having to do the work. Does that make sense? Yeah. I've been thinking about that a little bit. I think maybe I like feel things in order to avoid feeling things. Yeah. Yeah. Basically. Like if a movie makes me cry, because a lot of movies make me cry, but it sort of satisfies the like feelings enough that I don't have to like go off and address my own actual feelings. You don't understand that at all.
No, I wouldn't say I don't understand it. I can't empathize.
Right. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you don't get what that means, like what that feels like.
I mean, it is possible that I don't or haven't felt that. Basically what I'm thinking is I could feel similarly and not know it yet.
That's true. Yeah, I guess. You're just like not in tune with your feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would say on where I am at on my mental health scale, I don't feel that way. And I feel like I try to feel, and I welcome feelings, and I am very interested to chisel down, and find what is underlying. And I would love to find something that makes me cry.
Yeah.
I seek that. So I don't feel that I'm hiding
Mm-hmm.
like internal or external feelings. I welcome all.
Mm-hmm.
In any sort of view or opposing, thought or just feeling in general, what good or,
Right.
like
Experiences,
experiences,
good or bad, are still experiences.
right.
Yeah.
And so I definitely seek that. And I don't feel like it's to mask like inner feelings I haven't dealt with. I think more so I may seek, well, I mean, I think I've already said it. I do seek those to understand what internal feelings may feel like in that way of just like, if I find something that's like, this makes me have a strong emotional reaction.
Yeah.
I live vicariously
Right.
through that external stimulation.
Yeah. Well, it would be, I guess, sort of the same for me. It just depends on what you're employing the external stimulation to do. Like, does that make sense? Like, I live vicariously through the movie or whatever and feel the things so that depending on like what level of health I'm at, like it, so that I can not have to sit with myself, right? Like,
yeah,
I am using it externally or live vicariously through it, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Just in a different way.
Interesting.
But it all depends on, again, levels of health. Like if I'm in a pretty decent mental state, then I can 100% address myself and like not be afraid of like what stares back at me, But like the more unhealthy you get, the harder it is. The more unhealthy I get.
Yeah.
The harder it is to like really look at yourself because you don't want to. You know what I mean? Like that's mental health. So it just depends. But I do think I operate, regardless of my mental health, good or bad or whatever, regardless of whatever scale, I operate on feelings. And I'm not afraid to feel them. And I'm not afraid to like face somebody who feels the exact opposite of me. And like, I think that there's still something common between every human being. Like, there's this one girl I interviewed a long time ago, and she said about people who like disagree with you. She said, the human in you and the human in them would be kind to each other. So I just always try to find that. Like, regardless of everything else, there's like a piece of humanity in each of us that relates to the other. And so like, that's kind of how I operate. I just like try to find the humanity in another person. And like, once you find that, you can, go from there. You don't have to be their friend or anything, but you don't have to hate them either.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just thinking about in the context of this opinion, like this article of you basically feeling and then me representing the thick skin side of it. And just trying to think about how do I react to the world? Right. And I definitely have a thick skin, hard exterior when it comes to like anything like that.
Yeah.
Of like things that are in the news or whatever. I am hardened to those things, but it's hard to say in my preliminary, like, thinking about it, like whether or not it is a healthy or unhealthy level of that. Yeah. I think, as far as like being like hardened to the things in the news or whatever, like, do you have an example off the top of your head? The first things that I think of are just the mass shootings. Oh, and how you don't necessarily feel emotion about it? Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that can be obviously from a lot of things. It can be from an overabundance of reporting. Like there is such a thing as like sensationalism, and it dulls over time. There's also like and maybe it's the same thing, but I do think a lot of people kind of feel the like, how many times am I gonna you know what I mean? Like how many times can we all go through this,
But there's also, I think, something to be said maybe about just in general, the news is not like a healthy place to be around the last however many years, 3, 4 years, whatever. And so I have definitely like shut down emotions and like kind of built walls around like media, because it's just like not is a breeding ground. It's a fire. It's a dumpster, you know, so I think that you might actually feel more than you recognize that you're feeling, because I'm the same way. Like I put up walls against media because I just know that like it's just too overwhelming. So it's not that you're not feeling them. It's just, well, maybe it is. You're just not letting yourself feel it. Like, but it's more of a like a self-defense mechanism, a protection, and not because, you know, you don't care. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in the news stuff, it can come to like, you just don't have the energy to care about this stuff anymore. Like you gave so much energy to caring about the same thing over and over and over again. And it comes to a point where like, you're just tired.
In order to be a healthy human being on a day-to-day basis, you have to, every person has a limit, you know, every person has a limit. And I mean, there are so many people who are just continually like living in that, you know, just on Twitter all day, like getting the updates, getting the news, getting the whatever. And it's too exhausting for me to live in it. And so I don't.
Yeah.
And I know that comes with its own challenges, which would be like, you know, the building of walls, and not literally in my heart, figuratively, and things like that you have to like kind of navigate or figure out. But I know that I can't be a healthy human being involved in that stuff. So, I mean, I have felt the same.
Yeah. It's just really disheartening, I guess, because like the 3,000th human life taken is as tragic as the first.
Oh, for sure.
But it's much harder to care about the 3,000th.
Yeah, well, I mean,
that's hard. 3,000th.
We've had more mass shootings than we've had days in the year. The last, 2 or 3 years in a row. Like that, more than one mass shooting every single day. Like that's a lot for any one person to really, truly feel and like understand. You just can't, like brains can't even do that. Not just like hearts and souls, but brains cannot comprehend that kind of trauma. So
yeah, so taking this back to thick skin versus feeler, and you know, that's in the realm of like media and news. But another example would just be in offense. Somebody you know, somebody you don't know, a stand-up comedian, whatever, like saying something that offends you.
Right.
And I would say that it is very difficult to offend me.
I would agree with that.
Like I think I mean, you wouldn't have to try hard. Like you can obviously, you know, most people could probably think of something that you like, I know this would offend you. Like, I mean, you can offend everybody, but I'm just saying in general, like I can very much take a joke. Like if people are joking around and people tell jokes at my expense, if that joke is funny, I'm laughing because it doesn't offend me. Like it's just, I understand sometimes things are just funny.
Yeah.
And you have to, you know, laughing at yourself is part of feeling. Because if not, then you're getting angry because, you know, you're trying to avoid, you know, whatever. Anyways, but mostly saying that like I have a thick skin when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Versus like you are much more easily offended.
I am very, very sensitive to criticism. And I would consider jokes being made at me criticism. Yeah, I don't take that stuff very well.
But then what's interesting is when it's like stand-up comedy and it's a performer and they are, you know, telling jokes, and the inherent definition of a joke is that it offends somebody.
Right.
but you don't get offended by that type of stuff. So you have
No,
skin of some sort.
Yeah, well, I've built it because I did use I don't know, it was maybe like 3 or 4 years ago when I started. First of all, I was never super into comedy, or it's definitely like stand-ups. Like that was not my thing. I never wanted to go to a comedy cellar of any kind or comedy shows. That was mostly because I was absolutely positive that they were going to make fun of me in the crowd. And that is, I can't think of anything more humiliating. Like it's never happened to me, but even the thought of it like makes me like hide in a shell and like never want to go out in sunlight again. Like I do not want to be humiliated or embarrassed in front of people. And so going to comedy shows was just immediately off my radar. But we did go to a Dave Chappelle show. He came through Tulsa. It was like 4 years ago, I think. And 5 years ago. I don't know. And the whole time, he didn't do one line from his rehearsed thing that he wrote. He just made fun of the crowd the whole time. And it was one of the funniest things I have ever watched. And I mean, I did the whole time feel bad for whoever he was making fun of, but I laughed, like, because it was just what you do is. And so I think that's when I started thinking about comedy. And like, obviously there have been a lot of conversations in more recent years about the place comedy has, and is it okay to make jokes, and what, all that stuff. And I think I've just sort of realized that comedy is actually really important to culture. And even if I cringe a little bit, because there are still some jokes that I'll be like, ooh, I don't know if I like that, but I never hold it against anybody because I understand the importance of comedy. And I think the only things that truly make a difference and the only people that truly make a difference are the ones who are willing to say the things that nobody else will say. Like, I firmly believe that. I think comedy is vulnerable. It is a vulnerable thing to stand up there and make jokes, maybe even about a people group that you belong to or that you love with your whole heart. But like, you're going to make a joke about them because, it's just like what comedy is. And so I don't know. I think I've realized the importance of comedy and people who are willing to say something maybe a little bit outrageous, because that's the only thing that really moves culture forward.
Yeah.
So that's why I've like grown a thicker skin, I guess, to comedy, because I just realized the importance of it.
Yep.
And now I really love stand-ups on Netflix. I watch all of them.
You want to know what you do not have a thick skin about?
I probably already know. What is it?
Any form of criticism about a piece of art that you like.
Ooh, that's true. I feel like, but again, I'm capable of fighting to the death for something I believe in. And so if you criticize a piece of art, well, first of all, I feel like you can't criticize art. I know that there's art critics and blah, whatever. Lots of people would disagree with me, but I don't think that art exists to criticize it. I don't think that you should pick apart a piece of art and like say what's good and what's bad and all that stuff, because it's all subjective. You are the only person who thinks that way. Like, there are 8 billion people in the world, and I just, whatever. So I have like a lot of opinions about art is what I'm saying. And yes, I will fight you to the death if you disagree with me.
Yeah. And I, on the regular, have a logical criticism of a piece of art, or maybe just a logical observation of a piece of art.
And you might be true. You might be right.
But Sarah feels a certain way about the art, and by me saying anything that could be relayed as a criticism, then we have a discussion, i.e. argument for many minutes about that song that happened to have a bad lyric, or that movie that had a bad shot.
But also, to be fair, I will defend art that I don't even like.
That's true.
I have 100% gotten into fights with friends defending a movie that I didn't even like.
You're like, I didn't even like that movie, but you have no right to say that about the movie.
Because it's important to somebody. And I don't think art is subjective. I don't think that there is one right way. I just don't. I don't believe in being critical of art. I think you can not like a piece of art. There's plenty of art that I don't like. But I mean, I don't think I have the right to say it's bad.
But speaking of the right thing, in Oliver's piece, he ends it by talking about the melding of the vulnerabilities of the two. And it says, one useful thought comes from psychologist Harriet Lerner in an interview with New York Magazine, who suggests abandoning the thick skin metaphor for a different one. I picture every person as standing on a platform of self-worth. If it's broad and strong, if you are part of a rich network of relationships, if you have multiple sources of self-esteem, and so on, the bad things will still feel bad, but in a different context. Resilience of this sort can accommodate pain, so you needn't obsessively avoid its causes, nor squelch it down inside. You can be okay, even when you're not okay.
That's actually really good to, like, a good metaphor, a good image, I guess, to, the more, because it's true, like the more friendships you have, the better you feel. The more, if you have hobbies, the more hobbies you have, the more, like, I guess the more diverse you can become as a person.
Right.
Like the more it's going to take to knock something out from under you. Because, I mean, that's really what happens. Like, if you get offended or whatever, anxiety, depression, like all of these things, like to not be okay is like something, it just like completely wipes you out. So maybe like diversifying is, is the answer.
Yeah, I really like that. Just a platform of self-worth. And essentially, we all need to have multiple sources of self-esteem.
Yeah, that's really important. Because how many men have, put their life into this one career job, right? And then they get laid off at 50 and have no idea what to do with their life. You know what I mean? Like, you've heard that story so many times. Or obviously, if a loved one passes away, or like just something like major happens, and then you just don't even know who you are. Yeah. Which, like, I understand that's going to be a feeling you feel no matter what. But the point is that you have lots of, what did she call it? Lots of working parts of yourself.
Yeah. It's the resilience of this sort can accommodate pain.
Yeah.
You needn't obsessively avoid its causes.
Man, resilience, though, is so important. And I think something we don't talk enough about. Like, I don't know how do you build resilience? Like, that seems like such a unattainable thing that, like, it just sounds nice, but but what's the practical steps to building resilience, Like, but it really, what I'm saying is we should talk about it more, because I do think that that's true. Like, resilience aids you in dealing with like terrible crap that's happening in your life and still like coming out on top,
Yeah, I think that, basically it makes me think that the practical steps are essentially that of building a platform of self-worth, in that like you're figuring out those, like your self-esteem and self-worth, and finding alternate sources. And
I know, but that's so hard.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's easy.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, if your self-worth is solely based on your external appearance, then, there's all of the problems that come with that in general. But, like, you can't handle anybody saying something bad about your external, appearance. So, that's an ugly outfit, or, you have a makeup line or something. Like,
yeah. I just feel like it's how I feel like a lot of people say, like, negative self-talk really does, whatever. And I do believe it does. I've done it to myself, but they're like, negative self-talk, like I just stopped talking to myself negatively, and like that helped. Like, how do you just like stop negative trains of thought? Because honestly, they are so subconscious. Like, how do you stop it? Like, it just seems so ethereal to me. That's how I feel like about building resilience. I'm like, how do you just like find ways to feel good about yourself?
Yeah.
Like, it feels like an impossible task. I'm not saying it is impossible. I'm just, whenever you're talking about it, like, it sounds all nice or whatever. And then my immediate thought is, but how?
Yeah.
That feels like it's going to take 50 years. Maybe it will, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Who knows?
I think that my self-worth probably is too heavily reliant on my artistic output or productivity. The things, one that America teaches is that if we aren't being, productive,
then you're useless.
Then you're nothing. There's some of that, and then also just some of my own, like, I guess maybe it is all that. And like in the past 2 years of not going from, producing a lot
right
in our life in Oklahoma, having, multiple career jobs, my own business,
lots
that
of
type of
streams
stuff.
of creativity,
and then going to New York and falling into like the YouTube thing, creating the 3 videos a week we were doing at that time, and growing quickly if in the beginning like that, like, gave me lots of energy because I think I felt a lot of that self-esteem, validation coming from that. And it was like, I'm doing something, I'm producing. But then as the, over 2 years now has gone by and things have never picked up pace, they've never really slowed down, but they haven't like exponentially picked up pace.
It's not like that one big thing that's like,
and so it's the same like subscriber growth per month. And it's like after 2+ years having a decent amount of subscribers, but not having enough to make it my career, makes me feel worthless.
Yeah.
Because I'm working so hard at what I'm doing, but making so little money.
Right.
So I'm not fulfilling my manly duty in, my cultural context.
Right.
To
like,
what I'm supposed to.
Yeah.
Because
like taking care of the house or whatever.
Because I'm not taking care of financially of us. And then that like plays into that. And then whenever I try new things, I try, working harder or different or more efficient on certain things, and nothing changes, then that chips away more at that self-esteem.
Right.
And then when it gets to a dire point like it is now of we have to make this thing work or like give up, almost like it's not quite that point, but it is the point where I have to get other regular work and take time away from creating the art and things that we are creating to make money, because all the things I've been working so hard at over the last 2 years aren't doing that. And so now that it's hit that dire point, I think I feel the most worthless, like I felt almost maybe my whole life.
Yeah.
And I think that is, I feel like very heavy and like depressed in this season of this transition, even though like it's super exciting and super like we're doing all these new things, and I'm like, I'm able to escape in all these different projects.
Right.
But nothing has changed like in me providing. And that sense of like not being able to do that, I think is it making me feel
It's weighing on you.
Yeah, it's weighing on me. And I think just thinking about that pillar of self-esteem, just thinking that through, I think that my pillar had a very large portion based on my output.
Yeah.
And or my more so my ability to make money.
Yeah.
I think is probably the biggest thing. If to really dumb it down, my ability to make money is directly tied to
And
how
I
I feel
would say
about
that's
myself.
very evident from early 20s. I mean, how many jobs did, and not just jobs, but like things that you were building. It wasn't like, oh, I'll get a job here and I'll get a job here. You were creating jobs for yourself.
Right. I was creating jobs for myself.
And lots of other people.
Like, yeah, I was creating jobs for myself as a preteen.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like definitely since I've known you, but even before that, you have always created jobs for yourself.
And so like going from, adolescence, creating jobs for myself and making money, feeling great about that, then going into my adult life, being, making money, starting businesses that, are successful in my eyes, and like it is bringing in the income that makes me feel like I'm doing something.
Yeah.
And so I had never experienced in my basically life, if you want to, take away my childhood, like in my conscious life, I have never been at a point where I'm not able to make money in the way that I want to.
Right.
And I'm at a point now where I can't.
Yeah.
Or I'm not
right.
yet.
Right. Like it's not there.
Yeah. And it
didn't get there in the timeline that normally
right.
it gets there for you.
And
usually you start a business and it's like 6 months.
Right.
Or whatever,
And I think the thing that hurts me the most is that fact that it's really, I'm not making enough money yet. But since it's been so long and it is morphed in my head to, I can't make money.
Right.
Doing what I want.
Because the truth is that you can take as many hits as you want, but every hit hurts. Like it's not, you know what I mean? Like there's obviously something to be said about resilience and blah, 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 like we were just talking about. But the truth is that life is going to hit you and it's not always going to be great.
Right.
Sometimes it's going to actually hurt and knock you back a few steps, I think that's currently where we are.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the spot that I'm at, like mentally, is where my feelings are at. I guess.
What I said, I was texting a friend the other day, and I sort of equated like the way I was feeling. Obviously, we've talked about this, but the way I've been feeling with like everything and anxiety and all of that to like it just feels like I'm standing in quicksand and like I can just feel myself sinking but slowly. So I feel like I feel myself going down, but I can't do anything to stop myself from going down, that's like kind of how it feels right now.
Yeah. And it's like if taking that metaphor and appropriating it for like what I was saying in the last 2 years of like, I've been sinking for 2 years.
And now you're like at chest level.
But now I'm like at chin level.
You're like, I'm not going to be able to breathe in about 2 seconds.
Yeah. And so that weight, and that pillar, like my foundation, it is revealing to me my foundation of self-worth, or like what is in big part the foundation of my self-worth. Yeah. Is my ability to make money.
Yeah.
So
it's hard to reorient too. Like once you learn that, then you have to go about changing it. And again, how do you do that? Like, how do you just decide that like however much money you make doesn't equate to, you know what I mean? Like that's a really hard thing, especially, I mean, I assume in most of the world, but because I live in America, that's the only context I have, especially in America where like money and productivity is king. Like I mean, that's just how it is. And so like, how do you decide that you're fine without it or without the number that you wish you had? You know what I mean? Right. Like, how do you just be like, meh, I'm okay. What? I don't know how that works.
I don't either. I don't have an answer. All I know is this podcast is over.
We've talked about feelings.
Yep, we felt. Earlier I mentioned that my favorite movies are ones that make me feel, and if you were wondering what those are, the Way Back is one that...
2 ways. There is the Way Back, and that's not the one.
It is called The Way, Way Back, and is with Steve Carell
Sam Rockwell.
and Sam Rockwell. That movie is, you know,
It's a great movie.
It's a great movie, but it's not like, you know, some Best Picture, you know, thing. But it always makes me tear up. Captain Fantastic is another movie that is always,
it is so
regularly
brilliant.
Makes me tear up.
Yeah, it's great.
Those are two that come to the top of my head of which ones actually make me feel.
Jensen's recommend.
Yeah. So thank you for listening to this episode of Deeply Curious. If you would like to learn more about the Jensen AV Club and how you can get deeper access, exclusive content, you can do that by going to jensenav.club. All right. Well, that's our show, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.